Oh, baby, it's the Dynasty Roundtable. I am back from vacation and I'm never leaving again. Ever, ever, ever. You're stuck with me for the rest of your life. Seth Diewold, Matt Babich here on the Dynasty Roundtable, and it's fantasy playoff week. Isn't that right, Matt Babich?
It is indeed the fantasy playoffs, the moment we have all been waiting for. That day before the playoff, like the new week on Tuesday/Wednesday, it builds so much anticipation, like just waiting to see the playoff brackets lock, getting those matchups set for the first time. It's almost like the season is starting again, the anticipation that the fantasy playoffs brings. And it's going to be an absolute joy to talk about some of these matchups here. And as well, it's an interesting time to be talking dynasty, because we're trying to win the fantasy playoffs, and we're also trying to help get ahead of the current trends in dynasty. So Seth and I are going to be talking about our bargain bin league winners from quarterback through tight end. Dynasty rosters are deep, so we want to talk about the guys who are probably lower on your bench that are going to end up winning people leagues. And then we're going to talk about one player each that is going to shoot up, fall down the rankings. We're going to talk some risers and fallers. And finally, we're going to talk some bargain bin stashes for the season to come. And it's all right now on the Dynasty Roundtable.
See, I wasn't ready.
Yeah, you weren't ready.
I was on vacation, but it's on right now, coming up on the Dynasty Roundtable. A little out of practice. It's all right. I went on the old vacation. But we're back. But we're here to help people win their fantasy playoff matchups. So, Matt, we're gonna start with the players that are typically, the fantasy gamers are gonna have some decisions to make. Keenan Allen, we heard the news today, he's gonna be out Thursday night. So potentially we're going to have some people looking for these deeper starts, on the players that might be on the waiver wire, players that might be deeper on the bench. So who are going to be some of these unsung heroes in dynasty and fantasy football? And we'll start with quarterback, and we'll work our way down. So what quarterbacks are you looking at in the quarterfinal matchups here?
That was a great intro, because you vamped long enough. I thought you were going to toss it to me too early. You vamped just long enough for me to get a tweet off about the show and flip to my show sheet. So props to you there on the perfect
what I
timing.
do.
It's like you never left. It's like you never left.
That's right, man.
But how about a guy who was sitting on his couch 2 months ago? Mr. Joe Flacco. I would debate it back and forth if I were to take a Podfather route and give him a rather phallic nickname, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Joe Flacco. These numbers, I knew he was throwing the ball a lot, but these numbers blew me away when I looked at his profile. 89 pass attempts in his 2 starts, 565 pass yards, and 5 touchdowns. For perspective, that is a 17-game pace of 4,800 passing yards and 43 passing touchdowns. What the hell happened? This guy, he played well in 2020 with the New York Jets. It was pretty clear after that he was pretty washed. He doesn't have a job for a year and a half, and now he has come to life in Kevin Stefanski's offense, and this team is now a pass first, pass often team, 5th in the league in team pass plays per game under Flacco, 8th in pace of play. They're getting up, they're running, they have a lot of offensive snaps. It doesn't matter if they're winning or losing. They're probably going to be losing because they still haven't been able to close these games out. They still haven't been incredibly competitive in these games. And so Flacco has a really nice 2-game stretch here in the fantasy playoffs, but he's going to get a lot of people to championships. He's not going to win a lot of people championships because he plays the New York Jets in week 17. That could be, believe it or not, that could be a game that potentially matters for the Jets in terms of their playoff hopes. So they're going to get a good Jets defense that probably that game, whether or not they're in the playoffs, is going to mean something to them. And so when week 17 rolls around, you just throw in Gardner Minshew, who plays the Las Vegas Raiders, who have been getting thrashed by the quarterback position, barring a really ugly game from the Vikings. So you get Joe Flacco for weeks 15 and 16. You slot in Gardner Minshew in 17, and then you've just won yourself a fantasy playoff because you likely are loaded at other positions if you're starting those two at quarterback.
Yeah, see, that's a great call. Joe Flacco has been, I mean, just unbelievable. And you, like with some of these quarterback options, you're just kind of waiting for that. Oh, there's Joe Flacco. Oh, there he is. There, welcome to the party, Joe Flacco, that we all know and love. So it's weird, man. This is such a weird year for me because I was very heavily invested in Justin Herbert. And so I have some of these options on my rosters. Like these are the decisions I'm making between literally, I'm looking at the waiver wire and looking down the barrel of Tommy DeVito. Like that's where
He hasn't even
we're
been
at.
playing that bad though.
That's back to back. He had 20 some fantasy points 2 weeks ago. That's who I was going to talk about. The playoff schedule is not great, but he's probably sitting out in 1 QB waiver wires. Maybe he's even, depending on how deep your dynasty leagues are, maybe he's even out there in your dynasty league. I don't know. Probably not. But the quarterback I want to talk about is this guy named Jake Browning. I traded a 3rd round pick for him in a dynasty league that I'm in, and I'm starting him every week in a Superflex dynasty league. I'm starting him in the playoffs. I know he got banged up, or not banged up, but he didn't drink enough water. He just needs to drink water. Even when it's cold outside, kids, you have to drink your water. Otherwise, you're going to go into halftime and get an IV. Okay, so you got to drink your water. But he's been unbelievable. And you look at the Bengals playoff schedule, and you remember we were all salivating in week 17 with that Chiefs matchup. I know they got to go to Arrowhead. That's not going to be easy, but Vikings at home, they play the Steelers, they play the Bengals. I mean, there are worse playoff schedules out there for a team where you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and weapons on offense, and he's done pretty well. I mean, there was a time where I didn't think Zach Taylor was a very good coach. I think Zach Taylor is a pretty good coach if he can get the most out of Jake freaking Browning. So those are some options I'm looking at. Tommy DeVito, Jake Browning could very well be, especially Jake Browning, I think, could be some deep, even in single QB leagues. If you lost Justin Herbert, could be out there sitting waiting for you. What about running back, Matt? What do you think?
So at running back, the RB landscape is awful because I felt like going through players, there was a very fine line between probably too good to be an unsung hero and then, oh my God, I would never talk about this player on the airwaves in a positive light. And so I tried to toe that line, and I guess Chuba Hubbard falls somewhat close to the line, and that's because lately, especially over the past 2 weeks, he's been getting that Dameon Pierce NFL team in hyper tank type of volume. The Panthers have given up on having Bryce Young try to carry their offense through a game. And instead, they've now given Chuba Hubbard 25 and 23 carries across the last 2 games, and that's led to 191 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. So the rushing volume is there for Chuba Hubbard. Now, the concern there is 0 receptions in both of those games. So he's not catching passes. So this is purely run-driven volume in a bad offense that's not generally scoring a lot of points. So that's a very dangerous archetype to chase in fantasy football. But the reason why you're willing to chase that is because of his end of season schedule. Atlanta, Green Bay, and Jacksonville, particularly Green Bay and Jacksonville. Atlanta fares pretty much in the middle of the pack in terms of RBs, but Green Bay and Jacksonville have been getting slashed by the running back position. And Chuba Hubbard has an opportunity if he's averaging 20 carries a game. If Carolina can keep these games relatively close, he could have, a 75 plus yard and touchdown performance, and 13 points in your flex spot these days goes a long way.
That's Chuba Hubbard. We were on him early in the season too, especially where Miles Sanders was being taken versus Chuba Hubbard. We were team Chuba Hubbard there, and he's definitely the better player if you ask me. That's a great call. And I never thought I'd say this on this show, especially this year, but Ezekiel Elliott going to win some people some leagues?
Yeah, I just didn't have the heart to do it.
Was that the one that you were torn on? Should we even say this guy's name out loud? Or
I don't really want to talk about the Patriots. I think he's a good name and that you should talk about him. I just don't want to talk about the Patriots until we make our draft pick.
Never in 1,000 years, Matt Babich, did I think entering into the season, week 14, where you need a player to just come in and save the day. Ezekiel Elliott puts on his cape, flies in, and puts up 27 fantasy points in week 14. And then you look at the playoff schedule, and it's the Chiefs, and it's the Broncos, and it's the Bills in week 17 with potentially Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, there's no point in rushing him back if you're the Patriots. You have to monitor his injury status. But Ezekiel Elliott, I never thought in a million years that I'd be talking about him as a potential league winner. And then I hate to say this too, but depending on Joe Mixon's outlook, Chase Brown putting up 16 and a half fantasy points, potentially a guy that was available in your dynasty league and you picked him up off the waiver wire this week. But I bet you in redraft leagues he was out there. So this is why you have to stay tapped in. You got to stay grinding the whole year, because you never know, these players that we never thought in a million years would make an impact. Injuries happen, pukey situations appear out of nowhere, and pretty soon you're looking down the barrel like me, like having to start Tommy DeVito. And I did start Ezekiel Elliott last week, and I ended up losing that matchup. I'm in the playoffs anyway, but these kinds of players can be the difference between winning and losing, and it's absolutely insane.
Yeah, I picked up in a redraft league Chase Brown as just like a random stash. I would have, if he did nothing, I probably just would have dropped him by the end of the week and stashed somebody else that hadn't played yet. And then he just pops off this 54-yard touchdown reception. And then also in his next two catches, garnered another 30 receiving yards. So the big play is what caught a lot of people's eyes, but he averaged 15 yards per catch on his next two receptions in that game. So that's, really solid output from Chase Brown. We could see him get more involved in the passing game after this. So he's still only 16% rostered on Sleeper in redraft leagues. So a little redraft comment, if you have room, if you're in a deep enough league, go stash Chase Brown. This is the perfect time to be making those kinds of plays. And I want to get to a comment here from the Harry Snowman. Shout out to one of the Player Profiler's most faithful. I think I found somebody who likes Chuba Hubbard more than I do. And that's tough, because I've been screaming Chuba Hubbard's name from the rooftops since the summer. But I get what he's getting at. Just the sentence itself is hard to hear. You call someone CMC light, but he's a good athlete. So I'm gonna flip the script on you now that we're halfway through, Seth. I'm gonna have you start with your wide receiver.
Well, wide receiver is a little bit tougher, because when you look at the rankings, it's a lot of names that you recognize. But one name that stands out as far as just pure scoring, and I don't know how sustainable this is, but I definitely think you have to have him stashed, is Demarcus Robinson. He's back-to-back weeks. He's put up double-digit fantasy points. You're never quite sure. You want to say that Cooper Kupp's going to be healthy. Everybody on that offense is going to be healthy. Cody Carpentier dropped a an amazing stat on me on the executive show, which you should go check out after this show is on YouTube. That I'm on every Wednesday before this show. With Kyron Williams, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua on the field at the same time, the Rams are averaging 6.6 yards a play. The best team in the NFL at that averages 6.4 yards a play for the season, and that's the Miami Dolphins. So that was one of the points he made, thinking that the Rams are a lot better than people think. So Demarcus Robinson is a part of that equation. If anything were to happen to a Kupp or Nacua, God forbid, he's been playing a decent role, at least on that offense. And then somebody who I think is really interesting is Parker Washington, too, from Jacksonville. Didn't have the greatest of games last week, but the week before, putting up 12 fantasy points, depending on your scoring. So Parker Washington for Jacksonville, again, but wide receiver is probably the toughest position to pick an unsung hero for. And then, I mean, who knows how this is going to shake out, and I might be excommunicated just for suggesting this guy's name. But Quentin Johnston, if he's available, I would stash him because Keenan Allen's out. We're not quite sure who's going to be playing quarterback for the might be this guy named Max Duggan eventually. I don't know.
Duggan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So anyway, what say you there, Matt Babich?
So I picked out somebody whose name on face value would make you say, well, is he really an unsung hero? But when you look at his fantasy ranking on the year in terms of fantasy points per game, this is somebody who has very much failed to live up to expectations, even the low bar that was set for him, as from my point of view before the season, and that is Marquise Hollywood Brown. He's been struggling to score fantasy points this season. He's currently only wide receiver 46, but he struggled to connect with Kyler early. He's got that heel injury. His peripherals, though, are exactly what you want them to be. He's 12th in target share. He's 21st in air yard share, and he's 20th in expected fantasy points per game. So there's a huge discrepancy there. It's really just been the lack of connection between him and Kyler and the lack of sustainable QB play with Josh Dobbs. And so we got 2 full weeks of, bonding time with Kyler and time to heal that heel. And I believe he's going to play this week. Not shocked that he has not practiced yet. He didn't practice for 2 straight weeks leading up to the 2 games he suited up for. So probably the same thing's going to happen again, where Marquise Brown will probably be limited in Friday and Saturday, light practices and walkthroughs. And he's going to face a San Francisco 49ers team that he just took for 7 catches on 10 targets for 96 receiving yards with Josh Dobbs at quarterback. This is a player. Now, I'm sitting in a situation, and I know it's a dynasty show, but I'm sitting in a situation in my redraft league where I just lost Keenan Allen in a 2-flex, 3-receiver league. So obviously a lot of emphasis there on receiver. I was planning on sitting Marquise Brown because of the health issues, because of the bad connection. I got some pretty reliable receivers, but now I don't have a guy that can go get me 30 as easily as Marquise Brown can get 30 with Kyler Murray. Look at the game logs from last year. Look what he did to start the season. I mean, he was a target monster, and he was putting up 20-point games like it was nobody's business. And so that's a connection that I will continue to put my foot down. I have 3 weeks left to do it. But until my very last breath in week 17, I'm going to pound the table for Marquise Brown, getting that course correction, getting that game where he's unlocked with Kyler Murray. And I think it happens somewhat this week, very much so next week against Chicago. And then the train's going to be rolling by the time they go to Philly in week 17, and he's going to take care of business.
That's a good call. Marquise Brown is going to be owned by somebody, but that's fine. You took the easy route.
Who's picking up? Who's picking up Parker Washington? We're talking about people who are on your bench.
All right,
No one's picking up Parker Washington. Now I don't have a single dynasty league where Parker Washington was available before 2 weeks ago.
All right. Well, maybe is Jonathan Mingo available?
No.
No, you don't think so?
No,
There's
not
some
in,
leagues where
not
he's
in
available.
I'm sure there's leagues where he's available, but the great people listening out here today, they're not in those leagues.
Okay. Well, I was going to drop him next. He's gotten last 2 weeks 10 targets, 9 targets, pretty favorable playoff schedule too. So, and he had back-to-back weeks where he had double-digit fantasy points in weeks 12 and 13. So, anyway, snap share is good. Target share, almost 20%, not terrible. Anyway, so Jonathan Mingo, if he's available, and I don't know if we could make a bet live on air, but I wonder what the Yahoo percentage is, if it's over or under 50%. But anyway, we don't have to do that now.
I'll go on. What about Sleeper? I'll go on our Dynasty Roundtable League right now and see what his ownership is.
Oh, yeah, and Dynasty, it's going to be a different story. Like,
This is a Dynasty show.
I get it. I understand.
How long were you away?
Well,
This should not turn into the
Marquise
redraft roundtable.
Marquise Brown is not like it's owned in 100% of leagues.
I know not a single person we said is on the waiver wire. They're on people's benches, but they need to be in their starting lineups because they're going to be winning people leagues.
Okay. All right. Took the easy way out, but it's okay. It's all right. Tight end. Let's go with tight end. Is there somebody? There might be somebody out there on your waiver wire that you could pick up that might actually be useful that you should have. Do you know who they are?
No.
Tanner Hudson, tight end, Cincinnati.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jimmy Graham, the ghost of Jimmy Graham.
That dude's on something. I'm telling you right now.
PEDs
or something.
Davis Allen had a double-digit fantasy point performance, tight end for the Rams. I pointed this guy out in my 9 mustache players video on the Player Profiler YouTube channel, which you should go check out. Brevin Jordan, if anything, monitor the health of Dalton Schultz. He might be back, but if anything were to happen to him, Brevin Jordan is a mustache for the Texans. And then Tucker Kraft. With Musgrave being on IR, Jordan Love has been playing better. I might have to eat my hat on that one. So these are a bunch of tight ends that you go pick up. I should just make a video, like top 5 tight ends to stash. Those are some good names, I think.
Just clip it. There's the video. You did.
Yeah,
it.
I just did it. We should have outlined it. If we would have been smart, we should have outlined. I would have outlined this section. We just clip this section. We say, Jay, get us the timestamps, and then bada bing, bada boom, work done. But you know me, I can't make life easy on myself. I gotta make more work for myself. But that's okay. That's all right. But I gave it away. Anyway. People should be watching the show so they can get this information.
Exactly. So with that being said, and all those really good tight ends on the waiver wire that you can pick up, my tight end unsung hero is Dalton Schultz. So
yeah, there we go.
When
who is not starting Dalton Schultz?
We had a fundamental understand. Look, I packed it in on that one. I'll be honest with you. I look at their tight ends and
we had
a fundamental misunderstanding.
Listen to what just happened on the show. Listen, not only do we give you tight stashes, we give you tight end stashes on the Dynasty Roundtable. And I list off like 5 of them. And then Matt Babich goes, you should play Dalton Schultz. Like, that's the guy.
I got to put out ESPN. Like, there's ESPN gets away with it. Like, dudes were writing about Jaden Reed 2 weeks ago in their must add on the waiver wire. Like, I mean,
that's why you stay tapped into Player Profiler. We're 2 steps ahead with this stuff. So anyway,
all right, my next choice is Evan Ingram.
I think you should start Travis Kelce in your playoff matchup.
All right, this feels like a really good time to to move on to a different topic.
Yeah, probably. Should we run informative segment time?
Yeah, I was gonna wait to the next segment because I just kind of botched having a good transition. But now that we're on the topic, we're gonna kick it to the Podfather and have him tell you a little bit more about Mojo, and we'll be right back on the Dynasty Roundtable podcast.
This episode brought to you by Mojo. Mojo is that player stock market. We love Mojo because we like making lifetime bets on players. You run out the clock on these guys. Mojo just rolled out a brand new fantasy platform. That's right. So now you can build a portfolio of player props. Oh, Jamar Chase over 77.5. Oh, Kadarius Toney under 15.5. Whatever the under is on Kadarius Toney, doesn't matter. You can just stack up the props in your portfolio. And the beauty is, once the Sunday games kick off, it's not over. It's not over until it's over with Mojo, because once those games kick off, you can then move in and out of positions. Let's say that you're well ahead of expectations. You can cash out. Let's say you're behind expectations. You're underwater. Well, you can double down. That's what makes Mojo so special, why they're different. Check it out. Go to the App Store, get the Mojo app, and use the promo code UNDERWORLD. The promo code UNDERWORLD gets you a 100% deposit match up to $100. So the promo code is UNDERWORLD, and they will match your deposit dollar for dollar. Go to Mojo, start building your portfolio, and then during the games, you can be a fantasy day trader. Woo.
All right, we are back. And don't forget, this is a reminder, we have many Dynasty shows, Dynasty content. We have you covered. There's the Dynasty Warzone, airs tomorrow, Thursday, 5 p.m. Central. Memphis, Randall Young is the man. So is his co-host, Jerry Sinclair. That's a great show. You should be tuned into that. And also, Theo started a new show, Theo Greminger, the OG Fantasy, Dynasty Life. You need to check that show out. Schedule's a little bit sporadic just based on when he can get guests, but Theo's always looking for people who can give you an edge. And in Dynasty, you need to stay 2 steps ahead at all times, and Theo's got you covered on that show. And we have you covered on this show as well, giving you all those tight ends. So click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we have a couple questions. I promised people that we would answer their questions.
Yeah, I saw that in the title. I was like, where? We did not talk about start sit.
But we haven't got too many of them, so give us your questions.
The more the merrier.
Flacco or Murray? I'm gonna go Murray there.
Yeah, I will too, pretty easily.
And then we have another one, Josh Palmer or Zay Jones. In that situation, assuming Palmer is all the way back and all the way healthy, give me Josh Palmer, full PPR.
Yeah, I think he's the guy that ends up getting the majority of the targets with Keenan Allen out. The Raiders don't really have a number one corner to cover anybody. The floor is equally unstable for both of these, and the ceiling lies with Josh Palmer, in my opinion.
Yeah, which, I mean, who knows what the quarterback situation is going to be like with Easton Stick, but the matchup should be okay. I mean, the Raiders don't have a stellar defense. It's all right. It's not great.
Mm-hmm.
So that you'd think the targets are going to be coming his way. So one more from KJ.
Why don't you just give us your login, and we'll just manage your team for you.
Come on, Matt Babich. This is a faithful listener to the program. He's got questions. We've got answers. Better RB2 start, Chuba, Deonta Foreman, Ty Chandler. I'm going Chuba. All right. So we have players every week. Dynasty, this is why we love Dynasty. Players are rising, players are falling all the time. So Matt, which player is going to be shooting up the rankings after the fantasy playoffs are over?
I don't feel like I'm in a safe space. I feel insecure. So you've just been making fun of a lot of my answers today. And
this seems like a role reversal of what typically happens on this show.
Yeah, that's true. When you put it that way.
Yeah.
So I talked about this player on the Trade Gods podcast with Jason Allwine. Go follow him on Twitter at JFootballWine. And I basically said, look, now's a good time to buy this player because he's been dealing with an ankle injury that's clearly been hindering his performance. His offense is unstable. His coach is unstable, and he's also a doofus. But he plays on the Los Angeles Chargers, and they're going to need some production and more a reliable receiver for whoever starts at quarterback. And so Austin Eckler is the perfect player to fill that void. So last week he had 51 rushing yards on 10 carries, so 5.1 yards per carry. I know there's been a lot of statements about him being washed. He looked a lot more juiced in the rush game last week, and a rushing touchdown, 7 targets, 5 receptions, and 49 receiving yards. RB4 on the week, or RB8 on the week, one of the two. 22 fantasy points PPR. So the fall of Austin Eckler has been greatly exaggerated. He currently sits as RB25 on Keep Trade Cut. He has 5 top 10 weekly finishes, 4 top 4 weekly finishes in 10 games, 6+ targets in 6 of 10 games, 5+ targets in 7 of 10 games. And he has the Raiders, the Bills, and the Denver Broncos to close out the season. That is a luxurious playoff schedule for a running back, particularly a pass-catching threat like Austin Eckler. And I think they lean into him a little bit more in the passing game, maybe 6 to 8 targets this week. And the Raiders defense is soft. He could easily find the end zone at least once. This is a guy at RB25. He's going to finish inside the top 20, potentially inside the top 18 by the end of the season, depending on his performance.
I actually like that. You know, I'm always the way I structure my teams. The running back is the cherry on top of the sundae. So if I can buy Austin Eckler at a reasonable price, I think he's got some years ahead of him just based on the role that I think he wants to be on a team that can win a Super Bowl. His contract's up after this year, I believe. The contract talks really didn't go anywhere in Los Angeles, so his future's kind of uncertain. But he strikes me as somebody who wants to continue playing, and I think I'd be willing to take a chance there with his talent. And like you said, he's clearly been hindered by this ankle injury. It's not that he's not a good player anymore. It's just we have to cipher through the information that we have, and it's pretty apparent. So I think that's a good call. Go ahead.
I sense a transition coming, and so quickly before we get off the topic of Austin Eckler and the Chargers, I want to address some comments from Harry Snowman in the chat. So, yeah, doofus. This is a guy who is not proven to be a competent coach in the NFL. I mean, when the masses are calling for you to be fired week after week after week, and it also feels like the right decision, then maybe it's the right decision. I mean, Brandon Staley, he's supposed to be a defensive coach. The defense has been playing somewhat better lately, but throughout his tenure, one of the leakiest defenses in the league, despite having one of the league's sack leaders in Khalil Mack, and not being able to produce a winning team with as good of an offense as they have. That guy's a doofus. All right. Coach says Eckler's getting fewer touches. He said that before last week, and that didn't really happen. So no, I don't believe him. And Eckler, the game I was just talking about from last week was literally against Denver. So yes, it is as soft as it was. They've allowed 5 yards per carry in pretty much every game this season to the main rusher. All right.
So it's funny that you chose. I feel like we're on similar wavelength with our choice. I think Josh Allen is playing some of the best football I've seen him play. I know he makes a boneheaded throw every once in a while, but just the way he's been able to move the ball against tough defenses, put his team in a position to win, and really look like more times than not. I mean, he was on the field with Patrick Mahomes, and I know Patrick Mahomes is dealing with a lot of the drops. The dropsies are a real thing in Kansas City, but he looked like the better quarterback to me on that day. That maybe somebody probably argue with me out there, but he played really well. And as a result, by extension, I think Stephon Diggs' value is too low. This is a wide receiver that is tied to a really good quarterback. He's going to get the target volume. He hasn't been spectacular of late, but I think it's a player with a lot of juice left. And even though he is approaching that dreaded age of 30, even though he's getting there, he actually just turned 30. Pardon me. But this is still receivers number 4 in targets, number 8 in target share, number 11 in air yards. I mean, he's still a volume just, and he wins on his routes. He's number 8 in the league in total route wins.
Savant.
Like that tells me even though he's 30 years old, he's got a game that's gonna last a lot longer than people think. I think he's at least got a couple years left, if not more, 3. So I think this is a really good player. And wide receiver 6 on the year. I don't think a lot of people are valuing him the way that they should.
I wouldn't have.
I know, that's what I'm saying. And so I think for that reason, he should be higher on the rankings than he will end up because of his age, and potentially because of, if people are down on Josh Allen, which I don't know why they would be, but because the team is 7-6, I don't know. But anyway, that would be my answer for that question. Now, what about a player who is going to fall down the rankings after the fantasy playoffs?
Yeah, we definitely were on same wavelengths there. Picking an older player who's been devalued for some perceived bad performance, who isn't as bad as people are valuing him at. And, when people start winning fantasy playoff games because of bigger performances, that's going to really sway the rankings. So similarly, talking about players that are going to decrease in value, there's just a trend of Zach Charbonnet rising in rankings that I just don't quite understand. Because if there's anything I learned from his stint as a starter without Kenneth Walker, is that this guy is incredibly average. Like, he's not bad, but he's not great. So Kenneth Walker still has more explosive receptions on the year than Zach Charbonnet, which that's the negative that everyone was placing on Kenneth Walker, right? Zach Charbonnet is the better pass catcher, supposedly the better pass catcher. Kenneth Walker can't catch passes, and Kenneth Walker breaks like a 40-yard and a 60-yard receiving touchdown in just a few weeks apart. That's I believe this season, and Zach Charbonnet has been really struggling to carry the load as a starter, so to speak. 3 games with 10 plus carries, less than 3.5 yards per carry in each one of those games, and now Kenneth Walker is back. And that RB21 is just not necessarily sustainable over the course of the rest of this season when he gets relegated back to being the 1B or the number 2, however you want to call it. But he's probably closer to RB30 by the time the season ends.
Yeah, no, that's a great call. And this is weird for me because this question is like you're trying to predict the market too, so that's factors in. I think he's going to fall, but I don't know if he should fall because of the uncertainty around. And part of the reason why I want to talk about this player is because it's maybe we've talked about on the show, the most polarizing player out there right now, and that's Justin Fields. Justin Fields, look at his playoff schedule. He's kind of teed up to be pretty successful, but had a pretty good game against Detroit, had a really good game against Detroit. So is Justin Fields, who's sitting out there on keep trade cut, whereas I just had it pulled up, I think player 37 overall, quarterback 14. Think about where we valued him before the season started and where we're valuing him now. And the Bears play, I don't have it pulled up, but they play Arizona, they play Atlanta, and this week they play Cleveland. What happens if the Bears win out and Justin Fields? What do you do if you're Chicago? What do you do if you're a dynasty manager? And what if Justin Fields plays really well? Because I see a couple of scenarios, or maybe 2 scenarios exactly. Justin Fields doesn't play very well, gets traded. He's going to get another opportunity somewhere. I think that perfect opportunity is in Atlanta with whoever the best offensive coach is on the market that replaces Arthur Smith. That's the best case scenario for Justin Fields. But he's going to get an opportunity somewhere. He's too talented. If Sam Darnold gets another shot, Justin Fields gets another shot.
Put that on a t-shirt.
I mean, come on. Like, some coach out there is looking at Chicago and Justin Fields going, I could unlock that guy. These coaches, they have the like hubris among all. Like, we could put a system together to make this guy successful. Like, these coaches, like, they don't get to the NFL without having a little ego and a little confidence to them, a little swag. Like Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, you tell me they don't need a quarterback. I mean, there's so many guys out there, so many opportunities we could talk about. And the other avenue is that he balls out for 3 games. The Bears end up 7-9, maybe 8-8. Maybe they win out, or 8-9. What am I? 8-9. I'm on the week 16 schedule.
Yeah, I always have been.
They're 5-8 right now. They'd have to win. Let's say they win 3 games. They go 8-9, something like that. And now it's a really tough decision. Do the Bears take Caleb Williams? Do they move on from Justin Fields? I'd say it's probably like 80% they're taking Caleb still, just because of the financial situation. You know, because you get a reset at quarterback, and Caleb Williams looks really good to me. Like, we've talked about Caleb Williams extensively on this show. So that leads me to believe that Justin Fields is going to be in a different scenario next year. And I think that scenario has a really good chance to be really good, but I think that's going to cause people to be more concerned about Justin Fields. And is he going to start another game? Like, is he done? Is he going to be a backup quarterback for the rest of his career? I don't think so. So I think it's like he's my biggest faller for all the wrong reasons, because I'm trying to predict the market, and I can just see people panicking on Justin Fields, especially if he plays poorly. But even if he plays poorly, he's going to get another chance somewhere, because we have quarterbacks like Mitchell Trubisky taking snaps and Desmond Ridder in Atlanta. So, I mean, he's going to get another shot. I really believe that.
You said it. Atlanta.
It's the perfect. It's the perfect with a coach that feels like they can unlock him with all those weapons. I mean, it just makes a lot of sense.
Unfortunately, it makes too much sense, where it's like it just won't end up happening. I always feel like with these situations, like the most obvious thing just doesn't end up happening. But I really like the Justin Fields call. You know, we got a chat from our great producer Jay in the chat. It says, can we realistically expect Fields to crack the top 10 at any point moving forward? And, you know, for me, I think it's tough. If he gets traded to Atlanta before the NFL draft, then I can see him going back into the top 10 with a really good performance. Realistically, with what we've seen from Justin Fields, if he does that QB4, QB1, you know, incredible run that he had last year, the dynasty market is still volatile enough to where he could go back inside of the top 10. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's the most, like our friend Alan Seslowski said, sometimes you have to be willing to run into a burning building. And at quarterback 14, how he is valued by the market right now, yeah, there's a range of outcomes where he's a backup quarterback. That could happen. I'm not saying it won't, but that's it to me, based on what I've seen, what he's put on tape, his skill set, which is he's a phenomenal athlete. He's gonna get he's gonna get a chance to start again. And so you're gonna, like, if you buy now, I think it's a better chance than not that he reclaims that top 10 spot, especially if he lands in a place like Atlanta. I think it's a good bet to make. I really do.
Yeah, and as long as he retains some situation where he's in the mix, right? Like Will Levis is QB 19 right now. So like there's room for some quarterback with some uncertainty to be within the top 20. So I really don't think the floor is that low for a guy like Fields, because he's shown a lot of good and a lot of bad. But I think with his talent profile, he's going to be in a situation where if he's not the starter, he's in the mix, and in a team like, Atlanta, that, or like the old Washington, Commanders before Sam Howell, where they're just always kind of trying to find the guy, and then boom, all of a sudden Justin Fields has an 8-week stretch where he's the QB 15, and now all of a sudden the market's back in on him. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but like you said, that Allen said, sometimes you got to jump, just run into the fire.
Pittsburgh makes a lot of sense too, and I would love that situation.
I think that'd be great for him, especially
George
with
Pickens and Deontay Johnson and Pat Freiermuth and those running backs. That would be great. That would be another good situation. All right. Last question of the night. I can't believe we got here with, 15 minutes to spare or whatever. Which depth players are going to shine through during the fantasy playoffs and become sought after dynasty assets this offseason, Matt Babich?
So I think we're trying to shoot for, somebody that may be on waivers, may be on teams, but regardless of where they're at, they're going to be either people are being trying to get their claims in quick on these players, or they're going to be trying to trade for them this offseason when they start, getting a lot of offseason hype. And one of those is going to be then sophomore A.T. Perry. So the rookie is incredibly athletic. He's made some splash plays already as a rookie. And, there's no Michael Thomas. Rashid Shaheed is still not practicing. So this week there's likely going to be no Shaheed. Man, it would be a miracle if Carr played. It feels like at this point he refuses to sit, but Jameis Winston is going to start at least one game before the season is over, and that gives A.T. Perry just enough time to play with the gunslinger who can help push his breakout through the mold. And so I think if he gets a game or two with Jameis, someone who can throw the ball deep, utilize his skill set, and Jameis plays with, he's played with Mike Evans for a majority of his career. So he knows what it's like to just throw the ball up to the big, tall, fast guy down the field. And A.T. Perry is going to break the mold and become a sought after dynasty asset. And a couple other names I have on the list. So Zamir White is going to have an opportunity most likely this Thursday. I am knocking on wood because I am playing against Josh Jacobs in one of my leagues this week, so I don't want to curse myself too much here, but he is very questionable for tomorrow's game. If he were to miss, Zamir White is going to lead the backfield. We know what we have in Amir Abdullah. There's been, there's not a lot of faith in Zamir White at this point of his career. It's still early on, but he's just never been able to get into the game, and usually if you don't see it by this point, it's done. But Zamir White now gives himself a start against the Los Angeles Chargers defense to make a name for himself. And if he is on the waiver wire, probably a good idea to scoop him up just in case. If he truly flops in this spot, you can probably dump him again. And then last, but certainly not least, returning to the lineup, I think this week is Demario Douglas. And Wow. That was
I think I did it when I
that was a player profiler first for me.
I did it too, but I don't know if anybody could hear it, but I felt it, like my voice crack. But it was not as pronounced as that one. But
can't hide from that one.
No, it's live.
I just have to bring it down for the rest of the podcast.
It's live television. There's no editing these things out.
No, sir. But Pop Douglas, there, got it right that time. Pop Douglas. He's been getting great usage. Granted, there was Juju Smith-Schuster who missed some time. There's Devontae Parker who missed some time. But Pop was getting a lot of usage in the short and mid areas of the field. He was pretty much the only player on that offense where you saw some explosiveness in the passing game. And it really felt like the 6th round pick was holding up the passing game, of what little of it was left, the Patriots offense. And now Bailey Zappi, after Thursday's performance, seems like he's got a lot more juice. Now, listen, I'm the Patriots fan. I said Mac Jones, so now I just got a quick talk about it. Look, Bailey Zappi is not really better than Mac Jones, but you know what he's not? He's not a fucking crybaby. Bailey Zappi actually has some moxie and some pride and some dignity. And you can just tell. It was so sad me seeing this because I have an expensive Mac Jones card sitting behind me. But you could just tell this team around Bailey Zappi, how they interacted with him, where they're like, they like him so much more than Mac Jones. You could tell it's so simple. And he's given the offense a little bit of life. And so he's going to get a guy in Pop Douglas back that can really work the slot and make some big plays. So, that's a guy where I pretty much have him rostered in every league that I'm in. So, like, if you're in a league with me, he's probably on my team. But if he's still floating around the waiver wire because of his concussion and missing some games and just the Patriots being the Patriots, then now's the time to pick him up because the Patriots are known for this. I do think come next fall, he's going to be the starting slot for the New England Patriots.
I like that call. I think if there are shallower dynasty leagues out there, he might still be available. And yeah, Demario Douglas, a lot of juice to his game too. So A.T. Perry's a good call. A lot of these players are on my list as well. But I recently made a video that I've also already referenced, I think, on this show. The stashes that you need to make for 2024. And one of the players on there is Xavier Hutchinson. Xavier Hutchinson plays for the Houston Texans. If you want a cheap way to get exposure to one of the league's most exciting offenses with a quarterback situation that is about as certain as it gets in fantasy football, go pick up Xavier Hutchinson because he just had, it's funny when you look at these numbers because there wasn't much Xavier Hutchinson going on for weeks 1 through 12. His best snap share was actually in week 2 against Indianapolis, 21.4%. But then in week 14, all of a sudden, 73.2% snap share. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't even think. I'm the biggest Xavier Hutchinson fan in the world. And I did not expect him to outsnap John Mechie by about 20%. To be fair, in a game that was kind of a blowout, but still 70% snap share. And I think he's got real ability, real talent. I'm not shy. I was really big on this player throughout the NFL draft process. He fell to the 6th round, which is not great for an older wide receiver. He is 23 going on 24, but he's got good size. And he was a heck of a player at Iowa State. And I think he does a lot of things well for this team. And they kept him on the roster, a 6th round receiver. He made the team. And is playing valuable snaps for the Texans. I think there's a chance he can do something, and he's free. So I would go Adam. Best comparable player on Player Profiler, Romeo Dubs. So anyway, and if John Mechie's more of your flavor, I think he's a fine add too. Brevin Jordan, we already talked about. All those Texans, I think, are really good ads. And then kind of to transition or plug, there's also are several players out there that I feel like are misvalued. And we'll talk about these more on future episodes, but just like players like Roshan Johnson, Marvin Mims, Michael Wilson, like a tier above the players that we're talking about that this offseason I think are going to be really cheap to acquire, or people are going to misvalue where they should be valued. Like they're going to misappropriate the value of these players. And you always have to be a step ahead in Dynasty. And yes, It does require you to take calculated risks, which some people in your leagues might not be able to do because they have to have everything work out on a trade calculator. This is the world we live in. So you have to be able to run into that burning building sometimes and take a risk on a player. But the players we're talking about, you can either pick them up for free or it's not going to cost you an arm and leg to add them. And that's always the way to go to build around that foundation that you hopefully built upon in your startup draft. And we have so much more good content coming. Dynasty rookies from myself, Matt, Theo, Maddie, the list goes on and on. So it's an exciting time to be tapped in and plugged in with us. So don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe before we get out of here. Any final thoughts about that topic, Matt?
No, I mean, my thoughts exactly really was, you kind of mentioned the tier above the players that we were kind of talking about, but that's going to be our bread and butter all off season, I'm afraid, other than scouting rookies and talking about rookies prior to the NFL draft and prior to rookie drafts, which I, for one, cannot wait for. It's going to be such an exciting time, but those are going to be the players that we're going to look back on at the end of the 2024 season and say, man, aren't you glad, the viewers glad that we talked about Roschon Johnson? Now, the people listening to this podcast know about Roschon Johnson, but we're gonna be delivering some hot takes, some hot values here in the offseason to come, because there's so much opportunity. There's a long spring, a long summer. There's a lot of opportunity for value to go up and down. So there's gonna be a lot of periods to cash in on that.
All right, so let's see. We got the Harry Snowman in the chat. I see a question. First, let's go to Jay. Who's most likely to be an NFL starter next year, Fields or Baker? I think Baker's played well enough that he's earned a job somewhere, probably with Tampa. That makes a lot of sense for them to bring him back. So I think it's probably Baker, but I think Fields is also a starter next year. So it's kind of a trick answer to a straightforward question. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think Harry Snowman said both too in the chat, and I kind of agree. Yeah. But if I'm going actual, probability, it's like Baker actually probably has the higher probability of being a starter just because his current team is winning their division and they are an aging, more win now team. It's going to be hard for them to actually acquire a quarterback that's an echelon above Baker Mayfield, whether it's through the draft or free agency or trade, unless they go get a guy like Fields, but that doesn't really seem like it makes a lot of sense. So, Baker's probably going to be the starter in Tampa. I would say probably at a 75% chance.
I'm in lockstep. Tajay Spears, Mingo, or Hunt, PPR, asks the Harry Snowman. What do you think, Matt?
Ooh. I'm ruling out Hunt because I think this is a positive game script for Cleveland, and those have been games where Jerome Ford has dominated snaps. So I'm going to stay away from Hunt. I'm not going to lie. I have no idea who Tennessee plays this week. So until I know that, I'm just going to say Jonathan Mingo. Actually, I don't really think I care who Jonathan Mingo. PPR.
Jonathan Mingo has been getting lion's share of. They play the Texans, by the way. The Titans do at home.
But Mingo, that's a Derrick Henry game.
Yeah, I think the answer is Mingo as well. But it's more of a 50-50 shot. I think. Yeah, I'm not even sure. Tajay Spears probably has a safer floor if you just need the points. But Derrick Henry's been eaten of late, and I think he dominates the touches in that game. Anyway, let's see the return of Roschon. Okay, I think that's it. For questions. Or no, we have one more from Ruckus. Better redraft stash, half PPR Washington or Pickens? That can't be George Pickens. I'm assuming he's talking about Parker Washington
and Parker Pickens.
Which Pickens are you talking about?
I didn't mean to do that.
Man, Matt's screwing up tonight, big time. No,
I think it's George Pickens. It just must be a really shallow league.
Pickens, who could it be? Let us know, Ruckus, if you're still in the chat.
I'm gonna say George. I'm gonna go ahead and say George Pickens.
Pickens. Okay. Okay. Anyway, thank you to the chat. You guys have been active all night. We really appreciate it. So maybe we have one more. So I start Cup on Puka together.
Yeah,
Okay. I don't know.
I couldn't read that one, so
I'm trying to get to all these. But anyway, so George. Okay, so the answer is George Pickens.
Yeah, it's George Pickens.
So Matt, do you have anything what do you got to plug? Do you got bold prediction? The floor is yours at the end of the show here.
All right, so my weekly article drops on playerprofiler.com on Friday mornings. So it's everything you need to know about the current week in the NFL. We're nearing the conclusion of the series, only just a few weeks left, but everything you need to know week 15 will drop Monday morning around 9 a.m. Central Time. You can find all my articles at playerprofiler.com/articles. That's where you can find everyone's articles on playerprofiler.com. So I suggest you go check that out. We're pretty much dropping articles every day, if not every day. And, they're all crazy informative. We have just all the articles you would need for a weekly prep. We have the air yards index from Ed DeLauder. We have the start sits from Aditya Fuldiore. We got Theo dropping waiver wire articles every week. Theo's doing content all over the place these days. And, just go check out the website. Go check out the other great shows on our channel. You can find me on Twitter at Babich_Matt10. And if I were to give a bold prediction, I didn't really plan for one, but I'm going to go ahead and say that Christian Watson falls in dynasty rankings because his health keeps him out a little bit longer than people would like, and he ends up not really building on the success that he started this season.
That would have been another player if we have another hour, because I actually think, where do you think his dynasty value is going to fall? Because it's going to fall, right?
I mean, he'd shot up. I can't remember exactly where he's at. I can find it real quick, but he was at like receiver 26. And I saw that and was just like, I feel like he was in like the 30s or 40s when we were having these shows before the season started. Yeah, he's wide receiver 26. And so it's a good question, because truly, if he plays and he plays similarly to the level that he's at, it probably stays at wide receiver 26. If he's not available, it's going to dip closer to wide receiver 35. He's got Devontae, Keenan, Jaden Reed, Mike Evans, Cooper Kupp, George Pickens, Josh Downs behind him. That's some stiff competition. And then Downs is right when you get there is kind of where like, okay, that's probably close to the firewall. So wide receiver 33 is probably close to the firewall where he can fall just from like bad player unavailability throughout the rest of the season.
Gosh, I still think I'd probably put him on the block, even at wide receiver 26. But that's just me. That's too hot of a building for me to run into. But I have a feeling his value is going to fall as we go throughout, because I feel like he's going to disappoint people in the playoffs.
It's just interesting because you can see that you can tell it's missing an element when the Packers offense plays without him out on the field. And then that offense just hits a different tier in the passing game when he's out there, whether or not he's involved. So with the talent that he's shown in spurts and the development of Love, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm going to be back in next season because I just think it's there. And, he's a player that I'm going to do it. I did it with Denzel Mims, right? I did it with Hakeem Butler. I didn't hold on to as long as with Hakeem Butler, but I'm just going to keep chasing this. I'm going to keep chasing this archetype, and then I'm going to find DK Metcalf. It's going to, it's going to happen.
Christian Watson's actually, proven something. I mean, he's at least put together in spurts.
Exactly. I'm at least going to chase that archetype when they somewhat prove it, because I was out on Christian Watson until last season. So I was not drafting him in rookie drafts. And because I was like, I've done Denzel Mims before. Like, I've smoked Denzel Mims like 4 or 5 times in my life, and it's just never really panned out well for me. I'm a recovering Mimsaholic. And, I couldn't be too early on Christian Watson. But I'm damn sure not going to be too late. Let me tell you that much.
Well, that leaves me. You can find me at Seth_Diewold on Twitter for all of my crazy Bears talk, which it kind of turns this into for a segment. It was kind of a Bears show, which, by the way, we've got that number 1 pick locked up, boy. We do.
Dude,
Thank you, Carolina. Thank you.
That was the worst Thursday night football game that I've ever had to watch.
Yeah.
I didn't want to watch it in the first place. And I'm sitting here just going, like, are you kidding me? You kidding me? You couldn't have just started Mac Jones for one more game. You couldn't have put him out there one more time. But
Belichick.
So now I'm just, I'm Hail Marying for May at this point.
Yeah. Well, we got a long time to talk about it, Matt. We have a long time to talk about Drake May to the Patriots and Brian Flores. Who knows what they do at coach? But oh yeah, me too with the Bears. He's my number 1 free agent candidate, I think. But anyway, find me on Twitter, Seth_Diewold. YouTube, same story. I'm going to be posting content. I'm going to be cranking up my content game. So be tapped in on the Player Profiler YouTube channel. Go check out our articles, playerprofiler.com/articles. It's all free. Go check it out and like and subscribe. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. And sometimes you have to ride or die, right? I get it. David Montgomery didn't have the greatest. He didn't have the greatest, performance last week. I mean, it was okay. It was all right. But I really think this week at home in an environment where Jared Goff is more comfortable, he's not out in the cold, his fingers aren't shaking like a leaf, right? He's going to be able to move the ball against the Broncos team that I think is a little bit overrated. It's a little bit. They're riding high, I get it. But I think the Lions bounce back this week, and David Montgomery's a big part of that. And David Montgomery helps you advance to the next round of the playoffs.
Oh, no, you're not getting out on that transition because you just brought up a great point. Do you remember what our bet was way back when? Would you like to check in on that? Because I just remembered.
Marvin Mims.
No, not that one.
Jahmyr Gibbs versus David Montgomery.
Yeah, that's the one.
What are we at right now?
You're losing.
By how much?
Well, that depends on whether we did fantasy points per game or fantasy points. I can't remember.
I think we did
fantasy per game.
Oh, okay. Well, what's the fantasy points? I think we did at least 10 games with fantasy points per game because the worry was Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't going to play.
That's what I recall, and it was actually David Montgomery. But even though it was one game, or they've each missed a few games, but David Montgomery's missed more. Montgomery ranks 20th in PPR points per game, and Gibbs ranks 13th.
All right. Well, it ain't over till the fat lady sings.
It's not over, but a historic comeback over this back stretch of the season.
But who was the favorite and who was the underdog to win that bet?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So that's pretty close compared to where they were getting drafted. And Jahmyr Gibbs, came on in the middle of the season there. And he's certainly, Jahmyr Gibbs looks good. He looks good. What a pick that would have been. All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Matt. You're awesome.
You're awesome.
And thank the audience. Thank you. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. And until next time, we're not going to see any Aaron Rodgers this year. We all know that, but he's probably out somewhere giving his thoughts on Patrick Mahomes and Kadarius Toney, on Pat McAfee. And I just have news for him. Nobody cares about anything that he says now or anything that he says in the future. Nobody cares, Aaron. You can sit at home, wait for next year so we can do this whole kit and caboodle, this whole dog and pony show all over again. And it's not going to matter because guess what? You're over 40. The Jets they're just not that good enough. So bye-bye, everybody. Nobody cares about Aaron Rodgers.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.